Howdy, folks. How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to the show. I am the Outlaw Hatfield. And tonight's show, we are going to be discussing mass shootings and possible ways to survive such things. I know that it's a subject that a lot of people get turned off about, but it is something that needs to be discussed. And we all go to shopping malls, we all go to Walmarts, we all go to places where firearms aren't allowed, and we need to figure out the best ways to deal with that, how to get our families safe, how to take care of ourselves, how to locate our families if we're separated, and what our options are. Tonight I have a nice little panel going here. I've got Tony York. How you doing, Tony?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for inviting me.
Not a problem. We have John Z from New York.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thanks for the invite.
Of course, we have the one and only Night Strike.
What's going on, cuz?
Not a thing, brother. And we have Garage Guns from here in the great state of South Carolina.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Who apparently don't want to say a whole lot. So let's get this ball rolling with Garage. Garage, your background. What would you say would be the first thing that we need to do to keep ourselves safe? And if we do hear shots being fired, let's say a shopping mall.
I would say, personally, your best bet is, pre-planning. If you're going to have family with you, chances are, you need to have, plans. If something happens while we're out somewhere, what would be a place where we can meet up if we did get separated? What's your reaction going to be? What's my reaction going to be? Both me and my wife, Carrie, and then we have 3 small kids. So, obviously, we have to plan for more than just ourselves. So, basically, our plan is if we're out in public, we meet at the car if we do get separated, but we have our option A plan is to stay together. If you don't have to get involved in whatever is happening, obviously don't get involved, because we've got more to worry about than being a hero. We've got to be fathers and mothers and take care of our family and our kids. So that's my biggest advice to people is don't be a hero in the situation. If you don't have to get involved, don't get involved, especially if you have family members with you.
Yeah, that's always been my take on it too. First thing you want to do is make sure the family's safe, and if you can get out, get out. But what happens if the situation is you're there, and you are there when the shooter's there? You see this guy. To me, the smart thing to do it would be, hey, let's find some cover. Let's get behind something and hope for the best here.
I mean, I would definitely go straight for cover, and definitely cover and concealment, preferably cover. So important to know the difference. And then if you have the ability to obviously end the threat, do it. But you need to be very cognizant of what's behind your threat, what's beside your threat. Are people moving? It takes no time at all for somebody to get between you and whoever you're trying to engage, and then somebody else gets hurt, and then you're liable for that after the fact. More people get hurt in mass shooting situations by the crowd, trying to funnel and getting trampled and things like that. That's why so many people got hurt at the Vegas shooting. A lot of people were getting injured from being pushed down, being stepped on. You get a lot of people that are scared in a tight area. People are going to get hurt by more than just bullets. That's why the people who were the safest were the ones that found cars to get behind, or a lot of people were getting underneath the buses or things like that. If you can find in a mall situation, every mall I've ever been to has an emergency exit between every 2 or 3 shopping stores. So find one of them and leave, or go to a bathroom, or go inside one of the shopping centers, something.
John, you up there in New York, where the gun laws are so strict and you can't have a gun anywhere. What is your mindset in this kind of a situation?
It's pretty much similar to what Garage said. Find cover, concealment, preferably cover. Know your surroundings. If you're not sure, familiar with the area, know where those exits are. If you're with other people, try to get them out of there as well. If they have areas that can be locked, get inside that area and lock it up.
Yeah.
Um, for those people who are lucky enough to have firearms, those that live upstate, if you were to be in the middle of the situation like you had mentioned, find cover, but you might, somebody might decide to engage. Always make sure of your surroundings, where you're going to be firing, but also try to understand that may not be the only shooter there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, just because there's the one you see, that don't mean he ain't got a couple friends behind him that you don't know about.
Because you might have one of those friends behind you.
Yeah.
That's why that cover is very important.
Along that lines too, if you are involved in it and you prevail, don't be standing there when the cops showing up with your gun drawn, pointing at people.
No, no, no. I think that the smart thing to do after that situation would either put the gun down on the floor in front of you, or reholster and hands up on your knees, letting them know that you are not the threat.
Definitely
unless you're actually holding the gun on a living perp there. Don't be holding the gun in your hand when the cops show up, because you might inadvertently get shot.
Definitely the safest thing to do is to reholster your firearm and put it away, because if you set it down, then somebody else has access to it and it's out of your control. I've told cops many times, like during pullovers or things like that, like, if you want control of my firearm, I'm going to disarm it. I'm handing you an unloaded firearm. I'm not setting anything down that's still loaded. And you also have to watch out too, because when you're in public areas, chances are there's an off-duty cop there and he's just hearing shooting. And if you're shooting back, how does he choose which one of you two is the bad guy? So that's another thing you need to decide.
And that's that's a very good point. And you hear people talk about that. Well, if something like that was happening, I got a gun, I'll shoot back. Well, it's cops show up while you're shooting back. How do they know who is who? How do you distinguish yourself from the bad guy?
Even better still, another good guy with a gun.
Yeah. Exactly. See, there's so many variables that are just unknown, that it's a situation where the best bet is to get out if you can. But if you can't, it's a slippery slope to have to be on. It's a hell of a choice to have to make. But hopefully none of us will ever be there to have to make that kind of a choice. Period.
And like you had mentioned before, get into a room if you can and lock the door. But don't just rely on that lock. Like, once you get into that room, find random shit to throw in front of that door, dump things in front of that door. Because as we've seen before, like with different shootings, like, people like to shoot through doors and see if they can just hit something on the other side. Like, don't just lock a door and stand there and hope for the best. Like, continue to harden your area, or find another exit after you've locked that door, things like that. Like, don't just stand there because you're behind a locked door.
Right, you still need to get cover behind that cover.
Ellis, apparently Moon just solved the whole show, for you out there in the Gun Channel chat.
Oh, what did Moon have to say?
He said, 1, unarmed, get the fuck out of Dodge. 2, armed, get the fuck out of Dodge. 3, armed, suspect is close enough for you to take out. Dispatch with extreme prejudice. Show over.
Thank you, Moon. That was insightful
and instructional.
And instructional, yes, very. And then with that, we're going to close the show. Y'all have a good night. And if
how pissed people would be.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. It's in a perfect world, and if things were that simple, it would be wonderful. But how often, are things that simple? You know, you hear somebody start shooting, you're inside of a shopping mall, movie theater, school, wherever. You're at one end of the building, and you know your wife, your kids, your daughter, your son, your aunt, your uncle, whoever it may be, is on the other side.
Yeah.
Then you have a whole different situation on your hands. You know, your first priority, okay, is taking care of the family, taking care of the loved ones. But you can't do that if you're getting yourself killed beforehand. So, yeah, there's a lot of things going on there, and you have to be able to make good decisions very quickly. What's your take on it, Tony?
Well, you look at a situation like Vegas, and there's precious little you can do to defend yourself in that situation, aside from just getting the hell out. And even that wasn't really easy because of the layout. So I'm all for getting the hell out of Dodge if you can. Uh, I suppose you should discuss with your family ideas for what to do in the event something comes up. That would be a good idea, although I've never actually done it because usually it's just me and my wife, and if that's the case, we're together. But I would not run to an active shooting if I had any other friggin' option at all.
Oh yes, that's definitely going to be the last resort. Um, the only way I would honestly see myself running toward that kind of a situation was if I knew that uh, keep a spare pair of underwear in your vehicle for the aftermath. Yeah, because you're going to shit on yourself. Um, the only way I could see running into that situation would be is if I had a child or something like that on the other side that and then again this is something where you're taking a huge risk because you could leave that child motherless, fatherless, your wife husbandless, your husband wifeless. So you know it's in an ideal world you would say, okay, let's go to the mall, let's go to the movie theater, let's go wherever it is we got to go, and we'll stick together as a family. But how often does that happen in reality? The kids wants to go to the arcade, wife wants to go to Macy's and do some shopping. You certainly don't want to go to Macy's, so you're going to sit outside the store and wait on her. you know and you know, and I think Garage hit on something a few minutes ago when he said, have a plan. We're all going to meet up here at, if something goes wrong. Most of the bigger stores inside the malls have exits themselves, so they can get out there. You know, but other than that, it's a situation where you have to have some sort of game plan beforehand. And to be honest with you, if we were having this conversation 20 years ago and you said, well, somebody could come into a shop mall and shoot the place up, you'd probably laugh at them because it never happened. Well, in this day and age, it has happened.
People are
And,
sick these days.
well, people have always been sick. It's just, with the media playing on it the way that they have been.
It's been
And,
prevalent in recent years.
and that goes back to the media. I think that these people,
What also
it's for
comes
them, it's, go ahead.
No, it comes down to the way mentality is. Like 20 years ago, two people could go outside and beat the shit out of each other after an argument and then go back inside and be fine. Nowadays, you go outside and you fight, and then the loser comes back with a gun 20 minutes later and shoots the place up. Like, people just don't
Or somebody
carry
calls the
themselves the
cops
way
and
they
you
used
don't get
to.
arrested.
See, the thing is, I think the more likely scenario that somebody's going to run into is being somewhere that's getting robbed. Uh, you know, as opposed to some psycho shooting up a place.
Well, that's a common occurrence there. you're in a convenience store, somebody walks in and, this is a stick up, give me your money. That could happen
And
to
that's where
any of
threat
us.
assessment comes in.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
That's where threat assessment comes in. Like, you got to be able to make that decision really fast. Like in a place like the Vegas shooting, you got to make the threat assessment fast enough to understand, okay, this person is just trying to cause mass damage. So what's he going for? He's going for the crowd of people. So I'm going to get away from that crowd of people as much as possible. In a mall, chances are it's some disgruntled employee that got fired and is coming back to shoot his boss, or found out his girlfriend's cheating on him and is going to go shoot her and her, whoever at the mall. Like in a bank, that person isn't there to just shoot people. More than likely, he's just, if he were to just get the money and nobody engaged him, he'd probably just going to leave. More than likely. I mean, you have to make those decisions as they come up, but threat assessment is a huge factor in how you react and what's going to happen.
Well, let's say the situation is you're, in a convenience store or something like that. The chances are that this guy's got one thing on his mind and one thing only. He wants the money. That's all he's worried about. How do you deal with that?
Personally, if I'm in a bank and he literally just wants to rob the bank and leave, that money is insured. It's not my money. Why am I going to risk my life for something that the bank isn't going to take care of my family after I get hurt after? Or if I'm in a mall or something, they're trying to just rob that particular store or steal from that store isn't going to take care of my family if I get hurt. Unless it's a direct threat on me or somebody I love, or if I'm able to end a threat quickly and not risk others or myself, I'm just to be honest with you, I'm just going to stay out of it. And I have a protective mentality, but I have to make the decision of, my kids and my wife want me around a lot more than my glory of being on the news for 2 days because I did whatever.
Yeah, well, and like I said, that's not a situation that none of us ever wants to be in. And despite what most people in the media would have you believe about us gun owners, we are not glory hounds that are looking to be heroes. That's not why we have guns. That's not why we carry guns. And, it's an old quote from an old movie, but it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And that's why we carry them. And yeah, my first priority is my life and the lives of my family. That's it. And I'm not going to endanger myself or them if I have any other options. My first option will always be to get out, period. Night Strike, you've been rather quiet. What do you have to say on the subject?
Well, the problem is I've been quiet because everybody said everything I would say.
Well,
and you can't carry a gun in the mall.
Well, see, most malls have this wonderful sign on the door that says "No firearms allowed," which
in South Carolina you have to abide by.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where if somebody was of the mind to go into a place and shoot it up, that would be the place that they want to go. And we have a new gentlemen. Ghost, how you doing, buddy? Apparently, Ghost Man is having some technical difficulties.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. We can now. How are you?
All right. I had it muted. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine.
I got NSA popped.
NSA popped talking about mass shootings. Well, go figure.
There you go.
Yep.
It makes
sure.
sense now.
You know, they don't want us talking anything
I mean, in
real
South
common
Carolina,
sense. Go ahead, John. Or Garage, excuse me.
in South Carolina, like they on the law, it has a very specific size, sign, specific, like very specific what kind of sign is a legal abiding sign that you have to follow. Like if it's no guns allowed or no concealed carry. And there's a lot of businesses down here that have like homemade signs or random signs that you can buy at like Lowe's and stuff that say no firearms allowed. And it's their business. So if they catch you concealed carrying, the only thing they can do is ask you to leave. And then if you refuse, then they can call the cops. But like courthouse, certain places like that, those are places like courthouses, places like that. Those are places like you just can't ever carry into.
You've gone all robot on us, Garage.
No,
Yeah, you have a lot of static.
no.
If there ain't no detector in the door. No.
Goose,
I
what
think
is going
Ghost
on
is
over there
having
with you, buddy?
problems.
What's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but we got an hell of an echo from you.
Still?
No, you're good.
Now it's okay.
Okay. Yeah. I have my mixer on and
Yeah.
all that jazz, so my bad.
So, Ghost, what's your take on all of this? Have you been listening to the show so far?
No, I just got on. So what's been going on?
Well, we've been discussing mass shootings, what we would do, what we would hope to be able to accomplish during such a thing. What's your take on all of that?
Well, I mean, obviously, if I have the means and the ability, I would probably try to stop the shooter if at all possible. If I don't have a weapon with me for reasons that I'm lawfully not able to carry, then I guess at that point you're trying to get as many people around you to cover and safety. So it really depends on the situation whether I have weapons within my vicinity or not.
We'll see. Well, what we had started off discussing was like a shopping mall situation where, you're in one spot, your family's in another spot, and, there could be a shooter in between the two. Some
Right.
idiot wired out killer whose only goal in life at this point is to slaughter as many people as he possibly can before he turns the gun on himself, which is normally the case in these sort of things.
Right. I mean, like I said, it's to me, it's only going to be dependent upon what I have available to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to think that if I'm able to carry and I've got a gun on me and I have a shot at the person without bringing others into harm, then I would take that shot if he's, a mass shooting thing. If I am at a church or if I am at some place like a basketball game where guns, at least in Arkansas, guns are not allowed, then at that point I'm trying to get as many people around me to safety. And I mean, like I said, there's only so much you can do if you don't have a gun with you.
And I think that's a point we can all agree with. Let me ask you something, Garage. What would the police? What's the first thought that goes through their mind when they get that call? Okay, there's a mass shooting going on.
Well, it would depend on, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure I got rid of that robot. It would depend on where it's happening. Obviously, if it's at a school, they're thinking about covering, or chances are, it depends on whether you have the cop's state of mind as well too. They're thinking kids. They're thinking I got to get in there. It depends on whether the jurisdiction that you're in has a local SWAT team, how they're going to react. Some jurisdictions just don't have the ability to clear a building. So they have to wait outside. But the cops' mentality is to contain a situation, not necessarily rush right in and go take care of said bad guy or whatever. Their entire, like a regular patrol cop's entire mentality and training is all about containment in a situation like that. That's where a lot of people scrutinize them, like in the media and stuff like that. Well, why didn't these cops go in here and shoot this guy? That's not what they're taught to do. That's what SWAT teams and that's what quick reaction force teams and things like that are for. So, as far as like the way a cop would want you to react, say you shot somebody in self-defense or in a mall shooting or something, and you are the good guy for all intents and purposes, your biggest thing that you can do is not to seem threatening when the cop comes up to you, and just try to calm down and do whatever that cop asks you to do at that particular point in time. If he wants you to set your gun down, you set your gun down. You try to be as non-threatening as possible. Don't do anything. Don't get confrontational. Don't just whatever that cop wants you to do at that time, because you have to remember he's just as stressed, if not more stressed than you are at that point in time, because he's not in a he's in a reactive state of mind. You're probably in shock if you've just shot somebody and put them down a threat. You're probably more in shock, so you need to try to bring yourself back to a calmer state of mind and get yourself to the next step to where you're safe, because after immediately shooting somebody and the cops show up, you're not safe at that moment. Like, that cop can react and see you as an additional threat or something like that. It's all situational based.
Totally agree.
You know, you brought up schools, and that's uncle, a parent. That's their worst nightmare. You know, you got kids in school, and all of a sudden you hear something like this. What would you suggest a teacher do in that situation, other than, you know, the locking the door up if you can, blocking it, hoping that this guy don't get in? What other steps can they take to increase survival?
Well, I mean, their first priority above anything else are the children. So I think before they even contemplate doing anything, they've got to, as much as they can, get those children to as much safety as they can. And at that point, you know, I would like to think that most schools these days, you know, when we were growing up, we had the tornado drills and fire drills and all that. I would like to think that most schools these days would have a active shooter scenario drill, to where not only the teachers but the kids knew, no matter where they were, what they were supposed to do, where they were supposed to go. And then at that point, the teachers, once the kids are in safety, then the teachers, should they have additional responsibilities as an active shooter scenario comes into place, where they have to go and they maybe they're armed, or maybe that school has a localized armory, or, you know, whatever the situation may be. If they are supposed to leave that room to go and find what's going on, it depends on the scenario, but hopefully they have a protocol then that it kind of explains to teachers and the students exactly what they should be doing the whole time. I don't know if they do or not, but I sure would.
I believe
I hope to hell they don't have
active shooter situations have lockdown in place. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in my school here, we've had actually threats and a quote unquote active shooter in the last year, as far as the threat, the reporting of an active shooter on our campus. And yes, it was on extreme lockdown. I mean, like, they were, you know, they couldn't leave the room they were in or anything. So, I mean, I don't know if that's protocol, but that's what they do. I don't know if that's police protocol or school district protocol or what.
I believe most of the schools work with the police departments, and that we have them do.
I would hope
correct.
they didn't do specific active shooter drills, because that's just going to put fear of guns in these kids.
Well, I don't think that the kids have to necessarily be involved with drills, but I think the parents and the staff and administration should. So they've done this before. The faculty, absolutely. I think they should, so that they know, just like any other thing is, the more you practice, the more you are able to react under pressure.
I think I think the kids should be involved so they know what's going
And I know
on.
I know at least a lot of the schools around here, they have cops that like their full-time job is to just work at the school.
Yeah, we've got a liaison, I think, at our school for the cop. So,
Like my son's school has a full-time cop.
yeah, we do too. And I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to
And we
having
never
the
had
students involved in it, but I mean, I think that at least the faculty and staff should definitely be involved in, even if it's on the weekend or something, have them come in and work a scenario out every now and then.
I think that would be an excellent idea. And here's the thing: they could practice that over the summer without the kids being there, and you know, and during the school year, they don't even have to tell the kids what they're practicing for. Okay, this is a drill. They don't have to know what kind of drill. This is just a drill. If something goes wrong, we want you to know where to go and how to act and what to do. And if a situation comes up, you hear the alarm or however it's being broadcast. So the kids will know what to do. They don't necessarily have to know the reason behind it.
I think that if you're going to, this is just my opinion, I think if you're going to include the students, then I think that they 100% should know what they're practicing, because a tornado drill is going to be much different than a fire drill, and a fire drill is going to be much different than an active shooter drill. And if you're going to get the students involved, and that's a decision that they're going to have to make on their own as far as the administration, should they include the students. But if they do include the students, I think 100% they should know exactly what they're practicing, because the last thing you want to do is say, hey, it's drill time, or, and you do all this stuff, and then an active shooter is there, and they don't know what they've been practicing for an active shooter. So at least if something does happen, they are then prepared for that specific scenario. That's just me. I don't know.
Well, I don't know either. I mean, honestly,
It's way above my pay grade.
But it would, they were saying that the kids would turn them off of firearms. Well, they probably would, but the important thing is keeping them alive. That's
right.
And it's a scary situation that like I said, we hope none of us has to ever deal with, but there is always that chance.
I always thought, if you're gonna have the kids, if you're gonna want them to be somewhat aware, have it be called something like a lockdown drill. I think that's simple enough. Lockdown drill means whatever it is that you're training with a kid.
Yeah,
you don't have to call it an active shooter drill, but a lockdown drill. So anytime that they have to go on lockdown, it comes over the loudspeaker, hey, we're in lockdown, they know what to do. I like that.
And that may include making sure all the students understand somebody has to know where you are at any given time when it comes to lockdown drill.
Yep.
I mean, there's certain aspects you could throw into it without having to include them in those trainings during the summer.
Right.
Okay.
I think that would be simple enough.
Let's take a break and see who's all out there at the moment. Now that we've wasted some time here, 34 minutes. On the gun channel side, we have.
I don't think this is wasting time.
Food and Cycle Camp. Oh, figure of speech, gentlemen. And on the YouTube side, I see Gary, the Crazy Scotsman, Travis Talman. I hope I pronounced that right.
Talman and Travis T.
Yeah, there we go. Grimm's over there. Who else? I thought I seen Clover there earlier. Drox.
Clover was there.
Is out there. Let's see. Night Strike, you're everywhere though.
I am.
Daniel God is my judge. Yep. RL's out there.
Night Strike is Skynet.
Well, not entirely. I'm what you have to fight Skynet.
Well, we are doomed.
So you're the virus.
But, ladies and gentlemen, we as a race, we are doomed because Night Strike is our protector, our hero.
Our last and only hope, buddy.
Oh Lord.
Well, I'll just say this: if you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
We are the resistance. We are definitely the resistance. We are all resisting Night Strike.
Who? What?
Nice.
Huh? Listen to what?
Okay.
Good morning,
so,
Tony.
So let's throw a little something else in there. You know, we were talking about lockdowns in the schools and this, that, and the other. What about teachers carrying? What about, you know, them having a way to protect those children? Who thinks
all
that's a
for
good
it.
idea?
Well, hell,
I'm
they're
all for
American.
it.
Yeah, they're Americans.
Oh well,
I'm for it with the
with a caveat.
stipulation that they are required to take some sort of like training, like a very
Absolutely.
specific base training to what their role would be in a school, not just go shoot at targets and qualify. Like this would be your very specific role dedicated to just the school environment. Like this is
And-
how I want you to react in this environment. That's all this training is based around.
And that's
I would
something
agree
that would be
100%.
under the auspices of the police department or the sheriff's department.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Because those are the people that are going to be reacting to whatever situation is going on. So those are the people that you would want to train the teachers or set the
what?
He muted himself.
I'm sorry, those would be the people that you would want to set the curriculum because they're going to be the ones responding to the scenario or situation.
I agree 100%. I think that obviously having to have if you're in a state that issues a CCW where you don't have open carry, then obviously they would have to have the statewide CCW. But like you said, additional training just for no other reasons, maybe a close quarter training with the police department because you're going to be in certain scenarios that are going to be different than out in the open public. So absolutely, yeah, I would agree with that 100%. And make it free to the teachers so they feel like they shouldn't have to pay for it. You shouldn't have to. I mean, make it free to them or have some funding through the school or whatever to encourages these teachers to go and give the training. Because if you make a teacher pay an additional $50 for training, that's just going to help the problem of them saying, well, it's not worth it to me. So I would say make that free training as well.
Yeah.
we had discussed this
And
on.
and not just like shooting or how to react in like a shooting situation, but also like a TAC med type thing to where
Absolutely.
this is how I remove somebody who's been injured in an active shooting situation. This is how I treat like somebody who's been injured in an active shooting.
Yeah. Most people do not know how to apply a tourniquet, and that is an extremely important part of first aid, especially in that kind of situation. Is if you apply a proper tourniquet quickly enough, you can save a limb if you do it.
I think a first responders course should be included in that training in the summer for those teachers who are part of that response team.
Sure,
It
absolutely.
doesn't have to be EMT, just the first responders.
Yep.
And now here this leads to another question. You know, would this be a mandatory thing for all the teachers, or would it be a voluntary basis? How would we implement this?
You
I
can't
think
make
you would
it
have to make
mandatory
it
'cause there are gonna be
voluntary.
yeah, there's a lot of people out there that aren't gun people, and you can't force them to carry and all that. But I think it's voluntary, and I think you could probably get more people doing it that way than if you made it mandatory because they just wouldn't work there. They'd go find another job or something.
And those people who did volunteer would know that you'd get additional background checks. And once you pass those, you would go into this program run by the police department.
Absolutely.
Because
well, here's like a side question. How would you want that teacher to...
I'm sorry?
how would you guys want the teachers to carry in the school? Would you want it to be like a concealed wet carry, or would you want it to be like a lockbox in the classroom? Would you
Concealed
want it to
carry.
be
I don't want a
yeah,
lockbox where
like
someone else may have access to
people
it.
that are active in the school?
Guys, but before we get too
What
far
about
ahead
like
of
PE
ourselves with
teachers
this,
and things like that?
I also think we should have either a 6 month or at least a the teacher that in question that's carrying should have a psych evaluation.
Yes, absolutely.
I would
I
say
totally agree.
I would be comfortable with every 6 months, but if you want to stretch it to like every year, that's fine.
I would love the idea of every 6 months, but you and I both know that most school districts aren't going to be able to afford that. So I think once a school year would probably be justifiable.
Well, it would
You
it would
could probably
already
go
be
get
covered
grants for that or
underneath
something.
their health care coverage. Yeah, so
But not
Well-
every school can afford all of that coverage, and they have
Right.
some schools can afford basic coverage. But I think you're right though. I think at least once a school year would have to go get that 100%. Yeah. But
because
as far as how I would want to see it happen, I would say concealed carry on the person, if at all possible. If for some reason the teacher can't, because you have different styles of teaching. You have teachers in high school that are pretty much lecture, but the elementary school teachers are much more hands-on, one-on-one, where they go and they get near that desk, and do you necessarily want that gun there with an 8-year-old one-on-one at a desk at that student's desk? So in that situation, I would say that I would have to say a lockbox, but I would like to have it on person as much as possible.
I would say don't waste your money on lockboxes because that's just another place where someone else has access to it. I would say carry concealed. But that's my.
I understand that,
opinion.
but how many third grade teachers, when they're leaning over a desk of a student trying to teach them how to write in cursive, what if that gun cannot be
Don't put it
concealed all
in.
the time?
Don't put it in your bra.
Okay.
Or
I'm
like
just saying
a
that
PE teacher that's
find
teaching
people-
like basketball and jumping around a lot. And
there
like,
are
like
situations.
we already
yeah.
discussed, those people who volunteer have to know that requirement.
Yeah, but you also it's a safety issue. It's not the fact that they don't want to carry; it's the fact that you're trying to keep those students safe as well. And sometimes carrying on person does not necessarily give the safest measures to those kids. And I'm not saying all day, every day. I'm just saying that there are certain situations where they may have to put it in a lockbox because they know that day in that class it's going to be very difficult for whatever they're doing. So I don't know. I would hate for a student to get hurt because a teacher is required to carry on their person in an unsafe manner,
Well, no, the requirement would be to carry it in a safe manner. And if you know you won't be able to comply with whatever those requirements may be,
right?
then you just won't be part of it. This is in the school with children, so requirements have to be stricter than what they're normally used to. That's why I say you have to carry it on you. Whatever requirements you have to comply with in order to be able to do that in a safe manner, then you either meet those requirements or you are not part of the program. But I'm totally against lock boxes and locking up at a desk and having it in an area where it's open to others who are not part of that training.
and then you got to think about situations where like you have like what are those called? Like the substitution teachers and stuff. Like, are those going to be teachers that have to go through the training? Because a lot of times they're like full-time substitution teachers where they just
Right.
they travel around quite
Dude's in
a
a
bit
different
and go to just
classroom every
different
day.
schools whenever they want to work.
That makes things that takes things to a different area altogether. I mean, parents are used to one teacher with their children pretty much for the whole year. This teacher gets sick, she has to be out for 2, 3, 4 days. You've got a substitute in there. You don't know the substitute, and that's going to make the parents nervous, especially when they start thinking, well, this substitute teacher's got a gun. We know her regular teacher, and we're cool with that. But the substitute, we don't know.
But you have to assume that the school district isn't going to hire just anybody to come in and substitute. They're going to have to have known these people also. So you almost, to a certain extent, as much as you would trust the everyday teacher, you'd have to trust the judgment of the school district on their selection of, substitutes. Also, I would have to imagine that.
And they got to go through that background check and that training as well.
Absolutely.
If they don't,
Oh,
they
yeah,
don't
of course.
get to carry.
If it's a concealed situation, like, I understand, like, there's certain things, like, you don't withhold anything from the parents, but to let be like, hey, this is a concealed carry school. Like, because, I mean, there's many things in school, like, unless you ask, they just don't mention. Would that be something that you would want to know as a parent? Like, hey, every teacher in this school is carrying a gun, just so you know.
Well, they don't
this
need
is
to know
the
who's
training
carrying.
that
It's
they've
not
been
their
through.
business. It's not their business who's carrying.
And I'd like to take that a step further and say this. I think that whoever who signs up, if they sign up for this program, okay, fine. But here's the way we're going to set this up. On this week, these certain few are carrying. The next week, you're not carrying, but these people are. That way, it keeps people guessing. Because like you said, not everybody's going to volunteer for this, and those that do,
Yeah, I would say that you would have to make public. The school district would have to make public to all parents that this is a concealed carry school now. Blah blah blah. But I think it'd be a terrible mistake at any reason to release the names of anybody that is concealed carrying.
no,
Because if you
Exactly.
release those names and you have an active shooter, who are they probably going to try to get first off? Are the ones that they know are carrying.
And what
So
if it's
I
one
think
of
it'd
those
be a
parents
huge
that come in
mistake.
angry? And what if
That's
it's
right.
a parent that comes in? You don't want them to know.
well, that's
That's
why I
right.
said
I would.
that's
Yeah.
why it's suggested randomizing it, so nobody knows who's carrying, who's not at any given time.
What they need is a sign on the door that says every teacher and adult in this facility has the
Ability
ability
or
to
whatever.
conceal
Yeah.
carry
That's right.
firearm.
Do you extend that to the parents, or do you limit it only to the teacher and still keep the school like what would be essentially a gun-free zone? Like, just because you have a concealed weapons permit doesn't mean you're allowed to carry in our school, because you haven't been through this very specific training that we require our teachers to go through.
That's a really good question. I tell you what I would do is I would sit there and post. Okay, I'll put it this way. I don't know what the answer to that is, but if for any reason that you would allow a parent to carry on campus, I think that they would have to go to the main office, notify the administrators in the office, and be given some like a pass or something to keep in their pocket in case something should happen. At least they have notified the school that they're on campus with a firearm. But I don't know if they should be at all. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if there's a right answer to that.
As far as I knew, I thought most states didn't allow carrying a gun by private citizens.
Most states don't allow guns of any kind, whether it's faculty and staff or not, on campus. But
Yeah,
we're trying to we're making a different law to this.
Yeah, most states you can't even have a firearm in your vehicle if you're on school property.
Correct.
Well, hell, we can't here.
How does that?
We can't.
How does,
We can have it in our vehicle here, but we cannot take it out of a vehicle in Arkansas.
how does that work in a mall? If it's a gun-free mall and you're driving on mall property, which is the parking lot, does that
Most of the time
extend
it's
to
just
the
going to be you
parking?
can't enter the actual mall.
Okay.
I'd imagine.
Yeah,
It depends on if
Because you wouldn't know.
It would depend
You
on the
wouldn't know that it would be like a unless they had like signs posted at every entrance of their parking lot.
Right.
You wouldn't know until you got up to the door, because like you'll see it sometimes. I've seen it multiple times, like at movie theaters and stuff. Like new concealed carry people, they'll walk up to the door and they'll see that sign, and you see them make that like oh shit turn and go back to their vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if there ain't a metal detector, I'm just saying.
That's a personal decision. You got to do what you got to do, you know.
Yeah. And chances are, as long as you properly, if you conceal carry the way you're supposed to, nobody's ever going to know. Now, I'm not saying go into a school with a firearm because you conceal carry it. No, chances are nobody's ever going to know.
That's a
but like a
felony at that
movie
point.
theater or something like that, like if you properly conceal carry, nobody's ever going to know. Now, like I said before, I'm not telling people to do this, but
Yeah, no, I agree.
Well, now this brings up something else I've been thinking about over the last few weeks. You know, we've heard about the Las Vegas thing, we've heard about the church thing, we've heard about all these other mass shootings over the last several years. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's been a ton of these things, because there haven't. And the chances of you ever being in one is slim to none. It could happen, probably won't. I wouldn't suggest you wake up tomorrow expecting to be in one of these situations. But they all have a few things in common, and one of the biggest is it's all happening in gun-free zones. What happens if you say, okay, these things happens in gun-free zones, let's make these businesses that puts these signs on the doors that says no firearms allowed, let's make them responsible for the safety and security of the people within those buildings. They have to take physical responsibility for your security while you are at their state of business.
I'm pretty sure that's already there.
I thought they had already done that, where if you had decided that this is a gun-free zone, okay, now you are legally liable for anybody that gets hurt in your establishment because you decided to make this.
Is that way in Missouri?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's already been done.
I'm not sure it's legal, and that's law in every state, though, is it?
I'm not.
But what you're also saying, though, is until we have a national, mandate that it is every state shall issue, or every state is now open carry, or whatever. If it's as long as it's still up to the states, then it has to be a state thing. And in most states, I think that most states have probably already taken care of that. I'm not speaking for every state, but that's not a federal thing. That's got to be a state level law, that if you do decide to be a gun-free zone, and like I said, I think most states have already done that.
Yeah, most states are supposed to follow the Constitution, but yeah.
I'm not here to argue over the shall not be infringed, Night Strike. What I'm saying to you is, until there is a federal mandate that says every state will allow concealed carry, and as long as it is still up to the individual states, then something like this has to be a state level law. It can't be a federal law. The federal government is not going to come out and say, if you decide to make this a gun-free workplace, then you're responsible for anyone in your building, when the federal law can't even constitute whether that state can conceal carry or not. That's a whole different discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just making sure.
Oh Lord. Well, it's a situation where, like I said, none of us want to be there. And what would be, and Rod, you're probably the best one to combat this one. What would be, in your opinion, the ideal way for you and your family to make sure you're safe during or after one of these situations?
As far as like there is an active shooter, like what?
Yes, there is an active shooter. Uh,
Uh,
what are our options? Where do we go? What do we do? How do we react?
See, I might not be the best person for this because my experience with active shooters is strictly like in a real life scenario outside of like training with law enforcement thing like that is strictly military. I've never been in an active shooter situation where I had my family with me. I've only been in active shooter situations
Right.
where I had other people that were trained to the same level that I am trained, reacting in a very specific manner, that were trained to react against people that are in uniform. So it's very easy to figure out who's who or who's not you, basically. Not necessarily who's good and who's bad, but who's not you. But training with law enforcement and things like that, um, basically you do what you would do in any situation, like as far where there's a threat involved. You identify the threat and you try to go the opposite direction or to the nearest hardened type facility to where you feel that your family would be the safest.
That's right.
Ghost, what's your take?
Same thing. I mean, my instincts are much different than my family's instincts. I've been trained to do a lot more things than my family has. But my initial reaction is to get my family to cover into safety. And once I know that they're safe and they're good to go, then I might go do something else and try to alleviate the situation. But my first goal is to get my family to safety, to cover, and get them out of harm's way. I mean, I can handle myself getting injured or killed if I'm doing something, but I'll never be able to live with my family getting hurt or killed because I was neglecting and doing that. So I think that's all of our first instincts, is to get our family to safety, and then whatever happens from there happens.
Tony, what's your take?
I got really nothing to add. I was looking for something more definitive on what's what with security responsibility in a gun-free zone, and the only thing I'm finding is some mention in Tennessee. But
Well, I think last year Tennessee did pass a law that holds businesses responsible if there's an active shooter or something like that.
And another thing is like discussing things with your family. Like my wife and I, we bump heads on how to react in a situation because my wife comes from a law enforcement background where I come from a predominantly military background. And the way the military reacts to a situation is completely different from the way law enforcement is trained to react to a situation. So there are times where we got to kind of find like this is what I'm comfortable with and this is what you're comfortable with. Now, say
Right.
you have where you're a concealed carry type person and your spouse is completely against guns. Like, how do you kind of work with them in that situation?
Yeah, I could see where that would definitely be an iffy one. And I think that, like you said, there would be some definite headbutting, but and it's one of those situations where you can't say you know what you're going to do before you actually do it. Until you're actually in the situation, you don't know how you're going to react. I don't know how I'm going to react, and you certainly don't know how the person you're with is going to react. So it's like you said, I think discussing the situation would probably up front before it ever happens, if it ever happens, and make some kind of plans. Let's do this. Let's meet here. John, what's your take?
I really can't add too much more than what was said. If you're with your friends, family, try to make sure everybody gets out first before you think about reacting to anything else.
And that leads us to Night Strike.
I said all I'm going to say on this. I can't add anything any better than what people have already added. But no.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 7 o'clock. We have ran this show for an hour now. I think it's been informal, informational. I can't speak, but that's okay. I'm from West Virginia. It happens. Um, I hope you enjoyed the show. Informative. Thank you, John Z. Thank you. Informative. Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Informative and educational.
And educational. Yes.
Educational.
We're not from Alabama.
We're not from Alabama.
We're not from Alabama.
Or Arkansas.
We know the word discombobulated too there. Yes.
Ooh,
That's Night Strike most of the time.
come on!
Wow.
It was just too easy, man. It was there.
Kettle, have you met Pot?
Well, folks, we're going to end this one for the night. If you liked us, give us a like, a share, a comment, and I will try to get back to you. Y'all have a good night. Be safe out there, folks.